Hi, in this mini lecture, we're going to be going over the human microbiome, and more specifically, what locations are where we would see most of the microbes that make up the human microbiome. So from last week, hopefully this is a little bit of a reminder. What is the human microbiome? It's made up of microbes, and these are tiny living organisms, and these include bacteria, fungi, protozoa, or viruses. In addition, the vocabulary microbiome, this is all of those microbes in or on the human body that make up a community. And then the third vocabulary word that's important is a biofilm, and this would be a community of microbes that all live together on a surface. And this we would commonly see in the oral cavity would be a good example. This is a quick reminder of the major domains that we see species coming from in the human microbiome. That would be the bacteria, archaea, eukarya, which would include the yeast, and fungi. It doesn't show viruses here, and they are, though, part of the human microbiome. So there's a lot of normal microbes that are found on the human body. Usually they're found in particular sites where they're most commonly found. And these are generally 5 regions that we look at: the nasal, oral, skin, gastrointestinal, and the urogenital. These are where we generally have the hotspots for microbial life. Now, some of these microbes are native. They're normally found in or on the body in these locations. But also we can have some microbes that are introduced, where either they're introduced from outside the body or perhaps from one place in the body to another that they're not normally found. So the first place that we're going to look at is the nasal passageways. So when we talk about the nose, you need to keep in mind that, first of all, the nose is the primary defender against inhaled pathogens. And we also see that it has cilia and mucus that can trap microbes that are inhaled, so prevent maybe pathogens from getting in further into the respiratory tract. Often we will see inflammation of the nose and nasal passages if there's a viral infection or perhaps allergic reactions. And this is also where we would inhale medicines, and oral antibiotics can work if we have some sort of bacterial infection that needs to be taken care of. Keep in mind that there's a very delicate balance of the microbes in this environment to stay healthy. And that sometimes if you have a weakened immune system, so it's not really well populated with microbes that are healthy, we can actually allow pathogenic or bad microbes to grow in the nose that could cause an infection or grow out of control. And that's true for any of these sites. If we have bacteria that come in and they are able to get a foothold and they're pathogenic, they can cause disease. The next place that I want to talk about is the oral cavity, so within the mouth. And there's a wide variety of microbes that are regularly entering the oral cavity through either breathing or through ingestion. We have saliva that has a low pH, also the temperature, and some immune system cells that can prevent species from surviving in the mouth. Oral antibiotics can inhibit growth, though, of some of these healthy bacteria of the mouth. Brushing and flossing we do of the teeth, and this will clear some of that built-up biofilm. Remember, we talk about that being a large amount of microbes, generally a mixed group of microbes that can form a coating on a surface. And in this case, it would be the teeth. We do brushing and flossing to break that up and keep them from being able to make cavities. And then there is a symbiosis of the oral microbes. So the ones that live in there, that they have an ability to survive the conditions by being able to build up and live on the tooth enamel. And that if they're the healthy ones, what they're able to do is actually form a barrier for incoming bacteria that could be causing problems. So once again, it's a place where if we have healthy, proper microbes, they're actually going to prevent pathogenic microbes from inoculating the surface. The next section I want to talk about is on the skin, what we see there. So the skin has many different environments. We have some that are oily or dry, others that are moist, if you think about your armpits, the groin area, and microbes have a preference for one spot or another. Microbes can hide in different places and recolonize the skin after washing with soap. So even think about your hands. You have lines on your hands and places where your fingers bend, creases that sometimes microbes would actually be able to hide there. And even after you wash your skin, then they can actually go ahead and recolonize. The skin has natural defenses that help protect it from any bad microbes. Part of that is that we have a slightly acidic sweat. And also we have peptides that are produced by the skin that are antimicrobial, and generally they'll work not necessarily on the ones that normally are on our skin, but perhaps pathogenic microbes trying to enter our skins. When we use antibiotic washes or we have oral antibiotics, this can disturb that normal balance of microbes on the skin and may make you have a less healthy skin surface. So once again, we have a normal balance of microbes on the skin, and that they actually prevent the introduction of microbes that could hurt us. And any kind of damage to the skin would give a pathogenic microbe a chance to invade the bloodstream and cause serious illness. Next up is the gut, and we will spend the majority of our time in this class talking about the gut, and that's mainly because this seems to be one of the more complex areas for the microbiome and has a real influence on the body and brain as a whole. So for most microbes, it's very difficult to enter the gut because there is a low pH, meaning it's very acidic. There is saliva and bile, which generally are not conducive liquids for microbes to grow in. We have an immune system that will recognize dangerous microbes and will attack them. Also, it's hard to attach to the intestinal wall. We have a mucus coating on the intestinal wall, and we have peristalsis, which is that movement of food through. So it's kind of a transient state. So being able to attach to the intestinal wall is a real plus. And then also being able to survive a varied diet. If you're a microbe that lives off sugar and the person doesn't eat a lot of sugar, it may be hard to survive. Now, for those ones that actually can manage to colonize the gut actually, those microbes in the gut actually perform really important roles. They aid in digestion. They can break down things that our body can't. They will produce vitamins that our body needs but is unable to produce. And many others. We'll get into those as the semester goes on. And then also, this is a location where we can have a transfer of genetic material between species within the gut, meaning that you may have some bacteria that perhaps are drug resistant. They can pass that gene or genetic material onto other microbes, even if they're not the same species. And so this is something when we start looking at drug resistant microbes or superbugs that's going to be important to know. Next up is the urogenital tract, and we have a normal flora here too. The urinary system tends not to have any bacteria or microbes in it, generally because it's pretty much sterile due to the fact that it has urea and other chemicals, and also because urine moves through and flushes out microbes that might try to enter it. It really does tend to be fairly sterile. Now, if something like a catheter was introduced, that can cause an introduction of microbes into the bladder, which can cause a bladder infection. And then lastly, the vagina has a very acidic pH, and that's due to lactobacillus, which is present in our normal flora, which can secrete lactic acid and hydrogen peroxide. And that will actually protect the vagina from any kind of microbial infection from a pathogenic microbe. So in recapping that, this is just a picture looking at the different locations on the body and then showing some of the major bacteria that you would find at each of these locations. And so this is part of the Human Microbiome Project, which is trying to identify how much of each microbe is present at different locations. We'll discuss this later in the semester. And also keep in mind that the microbiome of one person can be very different than others, not only in the types of microbes that they might have in a location, but also in the relative amounts of each microbe. And we'll also be discussing that later. But hopefully this gave you a good view of the different locations where we generally look at the microbiome and perhaps some challenges that microbes face in colonizing it, and also some of the benefit that we receive from having the microbiome. Thanks.